VR is complicated. So many things go into it, from devs investing into VR, only for them to get canned or shut down due to low sales, and competition being so low for standalone headsets that Meta has this for their commercial.
Let's kick things off with some breakup stories. Who's first?
I'll go. My ex broke up with me via text, using emojis. I got a broken heart, a crying face, and a thumbs up.
Yeah, Valve, bring in the Valve Deckard, please, I beg you. Honestly, VR isn't in a good spot right now. Not because of the lack of hardware or software design, but it's the lack of advertisements, promotions, or innovation towards making it much better to jump into VR easily for an average consumer. But let's start with the biggest culprit on why VR is in a stalemate right now, and that's the lack of promotion. Every now and again, there are some good commercials promoting VR games, headsets, and XR and AR software, but most of them don't really provide something that a lot of people want to see, and that's games. VR is an expensive hobby, don't get me wrong. Aside from Meta's grip on the industry, most headsets can cost above that $500 price range that many would just say, well, I might as well just buy an Xbox or a PlayStation. And I don't blame them, because you could recognize games and software on those platforms easily without anyone needing to look it up on Google and know what you're going to get out of it. But the issue is the awareness that people have for VR is slim to none for the average consumer. Us VR enthusiasts can keep up with the VR news and games because we love and care for the craft of it, but to an average Joe, thinking about what they just want for entertainment, I would say a VR headset is near the bottom of that list. And that's just because VR is so weird in a good and bad way. On one end, it's a new form of immersion and gameplay that many would need to develop the right software, coding, and graphics for it to succeed. And with new things, there's always going to be flops and issues that arise from them even more. And that's the thing. It feels like an experiment and not an entertainment platform, polished and easy to get into. Meta software sucks, PC VR is too expensive, and games not really standing out of the crowd makes VR a huge underdog in the gaming industry. Now, some games have come out to prove me otherwise, like Batman Arkham Shadows, Half-Life Alyx, Metro Awakening, Alien Isolations, VR Chat, Gorilla Tag, and a couple others too. But I want you, an average Joe, to ask yourself if you know any other game, aside from the ones I just talked about now, that are in VR that's really recognizable. And I want you, VR enthusiasts, to think like an average consumer, to ask yourself if you can really recognize some of these games that came out recently for VR, and then compare those ones to how many flat screen games you can recognize more. I bet you didn't even have to think about that, because flat screen games have more than VR. There are games that push what the normalcy for gaming was, and being able to recognize those games off the rip is a huge deal. Halo, Call of Duty, Resident Evil, Half-Life series, Fortnite, Mario, The Last of Us, Mass Effect, Fallout, Grand Theft Auto. I can go on and on and on, and yet when I compare them to VR, the only ones that pop in my head are the ones that already have a foothold into the gaming industry. Recognizable IPs. And I think it's a good thing that we're getting these recognizable IPs into VR, but for VR, we need to make great games that really outshine the competition. We need to make more promotions, great stylistic approaches, gameplay that's ahead of its time. We need to really bring back the early 2000s of gaming competition into VR. Have you seen those commercials back then for Gears of War, for Halo, and a couple others? They were significant, stylistic, wonderful to look at. And we need to bring those kinds of commercials back. And we bring those back, I can see it succeeding a lot more. But I understand, money-wise, investment, it can be a little difficult, and recently a lot of dev studios out there have been getting canned, or they are failing because the lack of sales that have been happening recently. And it's a really tough time to be a VR developer right now. And I'm truly sorry to see these companies fail because of just the industry not being promoted enough. I hope that those devs do find a good spot in an industry somewhere where they can succeed with their skills and talents. Seriously, there's a lot of devs out there that have a lot of talent. I just wish more of the gaming industry could see that and put them to work. Now, the second thing we need to discuss is the lack of promotional advertisements. Now, mind you, Meta has a loss in cost when investing into VR, so it's understandable to see VR not be pushed out with commercials or ad placements around normally. But this is also hurting how people see VR as a whole. Seriously, Meta, to me, hasn't really helped these devs out too easily with making these promotional videos out there. I feel like sales would increase if they made it much more available or easy to make these ad or sponsorships for VR games. Like, why haven't we had a commercial for Max Mustard or Metro Awakening or even a couple other games out there? We got one for Batman, and you saw how those numbers went for sales. Why not make more? But look, this will be short and sweet. We need more advertisements for games for VR and provide something that consumers would love to watch during an advertisement. Not just for the headset meta, but for the games. Let us get more advertisements and promotional videos out there, commercials on different areas, on billboards, on sports, on whatever else you can find big amount of people at. Let VR flourish. And the last thing I want to talk about is what to do next. Well, to game developers, I would say making a VR game that has immersion and cool details will always matter, but I would also consider making your own commercials. Don't wait for it. Don't wait for Meta to try to push your content out. Just make your own and do the best you can with it. And I know it can be expensive, and you should consider it as well because you're the professionals here. I'm not. I'm just a guy talking to my microphone in front of my screen while wearing a robe. But I want you to consider the benefits of those promotional videos or advertisements and how it would benefit not only you as a dev, but also you as an industry for VR. And as someone who cares for the industry enough to criticize every VR game I come across, that's the one thing every dev is lacking right now. And there's a couple other things to note as well. Optimization and smooth gameplay will always take over graphic fidelity and cool effects. Sure, immersion is great and all, but as long as the gameplay is solid and very fun and part of the VR industry, by all means, go right ahead. Just so long as your game provides something significant to the industry, then please make sure that you know that it's something that we desperately need in the industry. One more thing too, make sure content creators have some way to be able to promote your product as well. Make it to where content creators can have a special tool to change camera angles in the game, FOV sliders, and a bunch of other assorted things to make it more cinematic and stylized videos for products to be seen. If you don't know where to start, look at Underdogs, Iron Rebellion, and even though I hate to admit it, Ghosts of Tabor for these great camera effects that can make the game look really cool and easily allow content creators to continuously pump out content at a higher quality. And that is it for me, everyone. Sorry for about taking a break and, talking about the VR industry again, but I feel like this video was needed to get out of my system. I needed this to get off my chest because honestly, I'm sick and tired of the industry right now. It's been lacking for a little bit now, and there's some great games out there, sure, but it's not getting the promotional or advertisements needed so that the industry can flourish. And that's why we're seeing so many of these game developers and companies fail because they're not getting enough sales for them to succeed and continue on making more. I feel like VR is a very niche industry right now, but we need to find a way to get out of that niche. We need to become much more mainstream, which is why I'm promoting and pushing for advertisements and promotional videos for those games. And I also want to kind of state with the content creators leaving the VR industry and complaining about the state of VR, I think they're valid, but it depends on what you're talking about. I don't think it's just Meta. I think it's the industry as a whole because we're in this zone of not pushing the boundaries of what VR is capable of, while at the same time restricting the things that are pushing those boundaries to not promoting or advertising for them at all. Like, why aren't we pushing out advertisements showcasing the cool things in gaming in VR? Why aren't we pushing out the ideas or games out there that are awesome and fantastic to play in VR? It confuses me. But what are your thoughts on the whole VR industry? Are we in a good spot? Are we in a weird spot? Are we in a bad spot? Let me know in the comments down below. Be much appreciated. What do you think needs to change for VR to grow? But that's it. Deuces. Take care, everyone.